Thanks for joining us on the program today. I'm Amarachi Ubani. Here's what's coming up within the half hour. U.S. President Donald Trump says King Charles III will be very safe during his state visit, starting today, following the recent shooting in Washington. Iran says it is willing to lift restrictions, on the Strait of Hormuz without addressing its nuclear ambitions. Plus, the Malian government confirms the death of the country's defense minister in terrorist attacks across the country over the weekend. Let's begin with World Today. Security is heightened in the United States capital, Washington, in preparation for the state visit of King Charles III. This despite the shooting at the White House Correspondents' Dinner on Saturday. King Charles is expected to make his first visit to the U.S. Capitol as a monarch. Now back to the shooting. Shots were reportedly fired near the main magnetometer screening hotel area of the Hilton Hotel, where more than 2,000 guests had gathered for the annual event. The president said at a press briefing later the Correspondents' Dinner would be rescheduled within 30 days. Well, President Donald Trump has confirmed that King Charles III will be very safe during his visit to Washington. Further security talks have taken place between the White House and Buckingham Palace after the gunman opened fire at an event attended by President Trump on Saturday. It was a Hilton Hotel in Washington, D.C. Now, when asked about the security implications for the royal visit, President Trump said the grounds of the White House, where the king is expected to visit, are really safe. Buckingham Palace says the King and Queen's program will go ahead as planned, with the UK government hoping the visit could help ease diplomatic tensions between the two countries. The 4-day state visit will begin in Washington, where the King and Queen will be welcomed at the White House by President Trump and First Lady Melania. So President Trump says he's standing by the leadership of the Secret Service following the shooting that happened on Saturday. The suspected shooter, now in FBI custody, has been arraigned. Is 31-year-old Cole Thomas Allen from Torrance, Los Angeles, a California-based teacher, and he's an engineer who believed it was his duty to target officials in the Trump administration. Other developments from the story: the Washington Hilton Hotel, venue for the Correspondents' Dinner, has released a statement saying its security protocols had been directed by the U.S. Secret Service, which led security for the event, adding that the Secret Service worked in coordination with a wide range of security teams, including local Washington, D.C. police and hotel security. Here's more of what happened the night of the shooting. Attendees of the White House Correspondents' Dinner in Washington, D.C. on Saturday witnessed chaotic scenes in the main conference room after reports of a shooting led President Donald Trump and other officials to evacuate the building. Shots were reportedly fired near the main magnetometer screening area at the Washington Hilton Hotel, prompting Secret Service agents to evacuate guests from the conference room. The U.S. President Donald Trump, First Lady Melania, Vice President J.D. Vance, and all cabinet members were confirmed to be safe. At least one law enforcement officer was reportedly injured and taken to hospital. Images posted on Truth Social show the suspect handcuffed by security personnel and fully restrained after the shooting. Local media have identified him as 31-year-old Cole Thomas Allen of Torrance, California. He has been taken to a local hospital for evaluation while investigators continue to examine his motives.
Well, thank you very much.
President Trump, in a press conference hours later, confirmed the main suspect was in custody. He did say the suspect appeared to have a hatred in his heart and was strongly anti-Christian. He added that one officer was shot but was unharmed thanks to a very good bulletproof vest.
You probably have it by now, put out on Truth and put out on many other platforms. A tape showing the violence of this thug that attacked our Constitution, and also showing how quickly Secret Service and law enforcement acted on our country's behalf. Really did a great job. One officer was shot, but saved by the fact that he was wearing obviously a very good bulletproof vest. He was shot from very close distance with a very powerful gun. and the vest did the job.
The director of Federal Bureau of Investigation, Kash Patel, called for individuals who have information to come forward to law enforcement.
And if any of those individuals have information, please come forward to law enforcement or the FBI or the Metropolitan Police Department. We will be examining this individual's background thoroughly. That process has already started, and we are going to ensure that he was either a lone wolf actor or anyone else that was responsible. We will analyze all evidence immediately.
Ladies and gentlemen, the 45th and 47th President of the United States, Donald J. Trump, and First Lady Melania Trump.
Authorities are also looking into the suspect's writings found in his hotel room. Meanwhile, the planned visit by King Charles III and Queen Camilla to the United States will continue as planned, the U.S. president saying the king is still coming.
I want to bring in now international affairs analyst Curtis Adigba. He's here in Lagos and apparently in transit. Curtis, thank you for taking time to join us on the program today. Let's talk about what happened.
Pleasure,
Great to have you here. Let's talk about what happened Saturday night. First of all, there were gunshots in the hotel, the Hilton Hotel in Washington, D.C. A lot of chaos outside in the lobby area. But within the hall, President Trump and members of the administration been evacuated from the room. But it did appear, some people who didn't understand what was going on just sat down and, considered having their glass of wine, while others were taking cover under tables. And then you saw reporters trying as much as possible to reach out to their networks to give updates on what was currently going on. What did you make of the incident on Saturday?
Well, thanks for having me. It was an attempt by a young man who is utterly disappointed and disenchanted with the situation right now with the United States. It was an attempt by him to take personal action against what he perceived to be the insensitivity of his government. From the manifesto that has been published so far, he talked about certain activities of the government that he is unhappy with, and he decided to take action. It's just like the young man who felt that Charlie Kirk was saying things and doing things that they shouldn't be doing in the United States, that these were things that were contrary to the ideals of the United States, and he had to take him out. Unlike in our situation, where a lot of people will just complain about things and then we just let them fly by. In other parts of the world, these guys will take action. So it was an attempt to get at the government of President Donald Trump, and he was stopped. He didn't even get into the hall. He just flew by. And so the moment he flew by and he started shooting, Secret Service knew something was amiss, and they just jumped on him and restrained him. That was exactly what happened. But of course, those who were in the hall didn't know exactly what was going on. And so there was a lot of confusion in the milieu, and you saw some people taking cover under the tables. Yeah. In the stampede, some were injured, and then you saw that the Secret Service quickly moved to cover the president and the vice president and the first lady, and then they took them to covered spaces where they were protected and kept away from any harm.
So, looking at this, there are some, and I've heard this in certain quarters, some saying that this was possibly staged. They're comparing this with the shooting that happened in Pennsylvania during the campaign of President Trump. Exactly. Where, the bullet whizzed past his ear and just grazed it a little bit. And we're talking about, how it seemed at ease everyone was. And how easy it was for this shooter to get that close to where the White House, to where the president was. This was supposed to be the most protected building in Washington, D.C. as at Saturday evening. How could a shooter have gotten that close to the U.S. president?
Well, Amarachi, I don't think he was that close. He wasn't even close at all.
But he was in the vicinity is a point.
yeah, within the vicinity of the hotel. But if you look at the graphics that has been outed so far by the FBI, there were two main security posts with magnometers that he would have passed before he could get into the hall. And he didn't go through any of that. So he was still within the premises before he was discovered, just because of the way he dashed through the perimeter of the security details. That gave the impression that this guy was up to no good. Now, for those who are saying this may have been staged, of course, you're always going to have conspiracy theories. But then the question people are asking is, how come this guy is so lucky? First was the Butler shooting, like you said. The bullet just whizzed through his ear, but that same bullet killed someone that was seated in the crowd.
Yeah.
And then there was an attempt at one of his golf courses, I think the one in New Jersey, where the guy was again staging at a post where he would have taken some good shots at the president. He was quickly discovered and then restrained. And then we have this third incident. So you could...
Curtis? He just seems to have lost connection with... Right, we have him back.
Attempts at his life should stop. Because I don't think violence will do us any good.
Right, you're right. And I mean, when these attacks, supposed attacks were coming on President Trump during the campaign, that was one of the points that was highlighted during the campaign. The fact that all of the rhetoric is breeding grounds for violence during the elections. And I know that this year America is supposed to have the midterm elections. Supposed to have midterm elections. A lot of people are quite upset about President Trump and some of his policies. But let's look at the aftermath of the shooting. The president, almost 30 minutes later, held a press conference where he praised the security team, the security service, and he also talked about the ballroom, which he said would have been, of course, more protected because it will be in the White House if that ballroom was ready. But some have pointed out that it wouldn't have contained at least 2,000 people. That ballroom will probably have just contained 1,000 people if he had had the dinner there. But do you think that there is some gain? There is a way that President Trump could twist this, so that it works in his favor?
Well, he's done that already, and he's been doing that. Remember that image of a president who had just been shot at, right? And the Secret Service trying to haul him away to safety, him raising his hand and say, fight, 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 was an iconic image. In fact, there are people who believe that image alone helped the president in winning that election. The fact that they had the presence of mind to stand up and to chant USA and to urge his supporters to fight, that brought out his base. And there are also people who believe that the president is at it again because he wants to derive, sympathy. That, look, I'm the victim here because I'm holding on so strongly for you guys. I'm fighting for you. I'm your defender. All I care is about you. These lunatics on the left, like he described them today, wants to get rid of me. So you have to support me. He's also said to them that, look, if you let me lose the midterm election, that effectively will be the end of my presidency, because these liberals will take over the House or the Senate, and our MAGA agenda will come to an end. But the reality is that right now, as I speak to you, the MAGA kingdom is fractured. Because, look, when you talk about supporters of the MAGA movement, the well-known supporters like Candace Owens, Joe Rogan, this guy from Fox News, what's his name now? Who has been at President Trump's neck for some time now, Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson and a few others who are so disappointed that this president who preached America first is now in Iran fighting a war with devastating effects on the pockets of American people. And so the president will want to flip this into an advantage, by telling his base that, look, I'm their target because I'm your defender. That's exactly what he's doing. But, look, this president should be uniting the country. when things like this happen, you expect that this president will tone down the rhetoric so that he can further unite the country. But like his former Defense Secretary Jim Mattis, General Mattis said, that this is one president that has not done anything to unite the country in his own lifetime. And we are witnessing that daily.
Curtis, thank you so much for joining us on the program, and wish you safe travels as you continue your trip. Thanks again. Thanks
for having me, Amarachi. Thanks.
We're off on a short break now on The World Today. Still ahead. Well, here's when taking a nap can win you something for real. Do grab. Welcome back. Still watching The World Today. Let's shift focus now to the Middle East. A standoff continues in the Strait of Hormuz. Two regional officials have claimed Iran's proposal suggests the country is willing to lift its restrictions on the Strait of Hormuz without addressing its nuclear ambitions. Additionally, the officials revealed that Iran is requesting the U.S. lift its blockade on the nation as part of this proposal. However, the new proposal conveyed to the United States by Pakistan is unlikely to gain the support of U.S. President Donald Trump, who insists Iran's nuclear program must be resolved as part of a comprehensive agreement to reopen the Strait of Hormuz and establish a lasting ceasefire. The Iranian delegation is meeting with the Russian President Vladimir Putin in Russia. Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi hails the relations between Moscow and Tehran, saying it represents a strategic partnership that will continue to strengthen. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said Russia is ready to offer goodwill or mediation services in future negotiations between Iran and the United States. It comes after President Donald Trump cancelled a planned trip by U.S. officials to Pakistan over the weekend for talks on the Iran war, claiming it would be wasting too much time. In other developments, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen says it's too early to lift sanctions on Iran, citing Tehran's human rights record and alleged killing of thousands of young people during a meeting with the CDU-CSU coalition in Berlin. The European Union has imposed sanctions on Iran in connection with its human rights record, nuclear-related activities, and military support for Russia's operation in Ukraine.
It is for me very good to be here today to discuss the different reforms on the European level, but also the influence that Germany has on the European level on the development of economic competitiveness. In view of Iran, your question, we think the dropping of sanctions would be too early because there's a reason why the sanctions are imposed on Iran. And this reason is their behavior towards the own population. 17,000 young people have been killed alone this year, at the beginning of this year, by the regime. It's the suppression of human rights and specifically women's rights in Iran and many other topics that triggered the sanctions. We first have to see a change, a fundamental change in Iran for the dropping of sanctions, and therefore we think it's too early to drop sanctions.
Sri-Lankan officials have arrested 22 monks at an airport in the country after discovering 110 kilograms of cannabis concealed in their luggage. Customs officials said each monk was found with around 5 kilograms of kush, a particularly potent form of the drug hidden within false walls in their luggage when they arrived in the capital, Colombo. The monks, who were mainly students, were returning from Thailand after being treated to an all-expenses-paid 4-day holiday by an unnamed sponsor when they were detained. According to police, a 23rd monk believed to have organized the trip has since been arrested in the suburb of Colombo, adding the monk who did not join the trip had told the other monks that the parcels are a donation and that a van would come to collect the packages. And now to Mali. Russian forces who have been in the country helping to protect the military government have confirmed they pulled out of the northern city of Kidal. In a series of media reports, the troops said they have left the locality along with Malian troops. It comes hours after Mali confirmed the death of its defense minister Sadio Kamara in coordinated attacks over the weekend. The government is yet to provide a death toll for the attacks that went on from Saturday into Sunday, but it said previously 16 people were wounded. We're also yet to hear from the transitional president, General Assimi Goïta, who was present in Kati, the epicenter of intense fighting. He was swiftly evacuated in a military convoy to the Samanko camp, a base for the special forces that he once commanded.
Mali remains at the center of instability in West Africa as military rule, extremist violence, and shifting international alliances continue to shape the country's future. Since back-to-back coups in 2020 and 2021, Mali has been governed by a military junta led by Assimi Goïta. The government has promised to return to civilian rule, but elections have been repeatedly delayed, raising concerns both locally and internationally. In a major shift, Mali's leaders have cut ties with traditional partners like France, leading to the withdrawal of French forces who had been fighting insurgents for nearly a decade. One of the most significant developments is coming after Mali's defense minister, General Sadio Kamara, was killed after his residence in Kati was hit by a deadly car bomb during the coordinated assault. He was confirmed dead on Sunday, marking one of the most serious blows yet to the ruling junta. Declaring a national mourning, the president of the transition, head of state, having regard to the constitution, having regard to the revised transition charter, decrees Article 1, a national mourning period of 2 days starting from Monday, April 27 at midnight, is declared throughout the entire national territory in tribute to General Sadio Kamara, Minister of State, Minister of Defense, and Veteran Affairs, following his tragic death on Saturday, April 25, 2026. Flags shall be flown at half-mast on all public buildings and edifices throughout the duration of the mourning period. The transition government of Mali deeply regrets to inform the public of the tragic death of Lieutenant General Sadio Kamara, Minister of State, Minister of Defense and Veterans Affairs. Indeed, following the cowardly terrorist incidents that took place on the morning of April 25, 2026, a booby-trapped vehicle driven by a suicide bomber targeted the residence of the minister. Sadio Kamara is one of the most influential figures in Mali's military leadership, a career army officer and key ally of Assimi Goïta. He rose to prominence after the 2020 and 2021 coups and was appointed defense minister and trained in Russia. Since Saturday's offensive, fighting has continued in several regions, with government forces attempting to regain control of key towns and military bases reportedly seized or attacked by insurgents. Despite these shifts, insecurity has worsened, with extremist attacks increasing and humanitarian conditions deteriorating across the Sahel state.
So as we close the program, how would you like to nap in the middle of the day for free and possibly win a prize for doing so? Well, these beds are not here for decoration. That's what's happening in the Chongming Forest Sleep Challenge 2026 in Shanghai, China. All of these are participants in the sleep challenge. They'll wear eye masks, lie on beds set up in a quiet spring forest as professional monitoring equipment tracks sleep quality and duration in real time to determine the overall winner. Only healthy individuals aged 18 to 50 are allowed to take part in the event. Competitors must remain in bed throughout the challenge. Anyone who gets up is disqualified, not even to go pee. Wow. Although participants may quit at any time, The sleeper with the highest sleep quality score will receive the maximum prize of 3,000 won, that's equal to $489. Other awards include the fastest to fall asleep award with a 2,000 won prize money and a shared 10,000 won bonus pool for live to win winners who made it through the full challenge. This was all launched in March, just March 21st to mark World Sleep Day. Challenges being held every Saturday until April 26th, as well as on May 2nd and May 3rd. Enough time for you to get those Z's in. That's a challenge I'm sure I could win. Thanks for watching The World Today. I'm Amarachi Ubani.